Hi there, Heather Steves here, and today I want to share another page with you in my Journal Together book. The one I'm working on today is acrylic paint, which was the prompt for the month of June. So I thought I'd take another stab at using my jelly plate. So I just covered it with some of this turquoise paint, and then I added some bubble wrap for some texture. I am new at this jelly plate thing, so I am learning a bit as I go. I decided to add some green onto there, but unfortunately I didn't wait quite long enough. So my first layer wasn't quite dry, but I went ahead anyway, and then I pulled the first print, and I didn't wait long enough for it to dry. So I used another piece, and I was able to pull a second print, which actually I kind of liked anyway. I put that bubble wrap back on there just to get some of the residual paint off of that onto the paper. And now I'm going to try another layer with some black paint. So I put that onto my jelly plate, but because it is fairly new, it was kind of bubbling up a bit. I'm also using cheap paint here, which I think does make a bit of a difference. So I had to just go over it again. I grabbed this stencil from the Journal Romance collection, and then I'm just pulling all of the negative space off of there onto this first print. And then I'm creating that second layer onto there. Just put that stencil back on to see if I could get some more of the paint off of it. And now I'm just using that second print that I made, and I'm going to pull another print. So I'm actually quite happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. So I have made my book with the Journal Romance collection, and then now I'm using the matte layer, the stitch layer there to cut most of my pages to go on top of that. So you see I just ran that through my machine. I ended up cutting on the back side of the second piece just so that all of my little edges would match nicely. And then I'm going to add this little flap onto the page as well. I'm just kind of playing around with what I want to do with it, but I grabbed some coffee dyed paper, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. And ink up all of the edges. You might have also seen me inking the edges of the other pages as well. So I'm just kind of figuring out where I want to put that little flap because I'm not totally sure what the plan is for this page. I tend to just kind of make things up as I go. So the fun thing about this collection is it comes with these little discs which you can add to put some string through, like those old style envelopes that have the same kind of closure. So next I'm just adding the second one that I cut onto the back. Because it's a flap, you're going to see that, so I wanted to make sure that it was covered up and you wouldn't see the back side of my little brad. So since the other side of my closure is going to go on the paper that I made, I decided to cut out more of these circles in the black so that that will stand out better. So before I attach all of that together, I'm just going to set it aside, and I grabbed the cut apart sheets from the coffee dyed paper, and I'm just using a couple of the little tag dies from the label tags and more set, and I just cut out the cut apart tag with that, and you'll see how it actually worked really nicely with the tab being a different color there. I'm just inking those edges, and then I have this little one I'm going to use, as you see, to tuck it in and hold it in place. So they're kind of plain, so I did want to add something to it. So I grabbed the stamp set from the Journal Romance collection, and I just went ahead and stamped this lovely decoration with my Versamark, and I've just added some shiny gold embossing powder onto that, and then that decorates my tag up a little bit. I'm just going to grab my heat tool and melt all of that embossing powder. You'll notice that I am melting that from the back side of my little tag, just because it's a bit of a chunky glitter, a chunky embossing powder, so I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to blow away on me. So it worked better to do it from the back side. So I'm going to go ahead and add some accents onto here. So I grabbed this little arrow stamp from the same set, and I'm just going to add some black ink onto that and stamp that in a few places onto my tag. So for this smaller tag, I wanted to do a similar type of effect on it, but this time I'm just going to stamp it in black ink, and then that just helps to add some contrast between the two tags. And I think it's kind of cool actually how this little mandala stamp actually looks when you're not stamping it in its entirety. It still looks pretty cool even though it's way too big for this little tag. So I ended up pulling out this little tab from Planner Essentials 49. I was going to use it, but then I changed my mind, and instead I grabbed this one from Planner Essentials 7. So it's an older one, but you can also find one on the newer set, the tag folder, that's quite similar. So you see that I've just grabbed my little, I don't even know what to call this little pick. That just has a little fuzzy end on it, so I use that when I'm getting really fiddly with things, and I was being very particular on this tag, and I wanted to make sure that all of the edges had been inked, even the tiny little circle inside there. So I just attached the two tags together with some glue, and then I'm just attaching this little tab on top of that, again with just some of my liquid glue here. So again, I'm just going to set this aside now that it's done, and I'm going to move on to the other page. So when I was looking through some of my stash, I had this little folder that I created a while ago. Again, it's coffee dyed paper, so it matches really nicely. And I just took that one little die from the torn set, and I cut out this little folder. So then I grabbed some black cardstock, and again, that's using the Journal Romance collection. I cut this black mat for it, and now I'm just adding some Versamark onto there with this flower stamp, and I'm going to go ahead and add some of that same gold embossing powder onto there. So I wasn't too sure exactly how it was going to look as I was doing it. So once I got those original flowers on there, then I went ahead and just kind of filled in the empty spaces. Obviously, you're not going to see this entire tag because I am going to put that little folder on top of it. But I just wanted to make sure that the outside of it would be evenly covered, I guess is what I'm looking for, so that it just looks like there's some really nice patterned paper behind that. So once I finished with all of that embossing, I went ahead and inked those edges because the cardstock that I'm using has a white core. So although you don't really see the ink that I'm putting on it, it does cover up that white core. So I still had a little bit of the pattern paper left over from earlier, so I cut out this little flower silhouette, and again I'm just inking those edges, kind of distressing it a little bit, and then that gets added onto the front of my little folder. So I'm finally ready to commit to some of the pieces. So I've gone ahead and just used my liquid adhesive, and I'm attaching down that black mat onto my base page. I'm going to use the liquid adhesive again for this little flower, attach it to the front of my little folder. So I felt like the cover still needed something else on it, so I grabbed one of the sentiment stamps, and I decided to use my embossing powder again, so I just stamped that with the Versamark and then added the gold embossing powder onto there. So once I completed that piece, I pulled out the original ATC special kit, and I grabbed this little label. It's what I've been using throughout my whole book. So I stamped that onto just some of the coffee dyed paper, and then die cut that out so I could write my prompt onto that. So once that was done, I decided it was time to start to assemble more of these pages. So I just pulled out a little button brad to use with that black circle, but then I decided I would start to attach the other side first. So I added that little folder onto my page, and then I'm adding the entire page into my book. So I just used some of my gun tape as well as some of the liquid adhesive. I just quickly attached the other side of the month label there, and now I am going to start to assemble the other side. So I wasn't too sure if that flap would look best on top of my page or kind of behind it. I did end up settling on putting it behind, so I just added a bit of my liquid adhesive there and just attached it to the back. I made sure that it was folded nicely so that it would stay closed nicely. And then I'm just locating this other brad for the closure. I used my foam mat and just pierced that there where it needed to be. And then I grabbed out this, I had some hemp and some string in my stash, but then I ended up finding this gold cord, and it actually really matched the embossing powder nicely. So I attached that onto my little brad there, tied it in a knot, and then I'm just wrapping it around a few times so that I have it long enough to secure that flap closed. This string frays really easily, so I just tied a little knot in the end, and that will keep it in place so that it won't fray. So once I had that secured, then I just added my little monthly label onto the cover of that flap, and then I'm going to go ahead and attach my page down to the book. So as a finishing touch for my little tag there, I pulled out some ribbon from my stash. I tried a gold, but I didn't like it as much. But I had this black ribbon with a gold stripe through it, and it actually looked really nice with it. So I just added some of that. Then I decided I would go ahead and do a similar type of tag for the other side. So again, I pulled out some of the tags from the labels, tags and more set, and I cut a couple of the cut apart sheets again, and I'm using that same little tab. So I'm just doing the same process that I had done previously, and I'm going to go ahead and put another stamped image onto this tag, but this time I'm going to use a different embossing powder. So I had this black embossing powder, but it's actually a really kind of dark pewter color once you heat it up. So I just added that with this leaf, and then I added some around the edges, and then I'm just heating that up. So you'll see how it kind of changes as it melts. It just becomes a little bit shinier, more metallic looking, I guess I would say. So just continuing along, adding some more to the edges just to make it look more even, and using a little tiny paintbrush just to get rid of some of the excess pieces that kind of ended up where they shouldn't have been. So for the smaller tag, I'm going to do the same as I did previously. I just grabbed one of the stamps, and I'm just going to stamp that using some black ink, and then I can go ahead and attach those two tags together. So I used some of that same ribbon again, just added that to the top of this tag, and then I put it into this little folder, but I feel like I still need something on the inside of this folder. So I just pulled out that same leaf stamp, but this time I'm going to stamp it with the Versamark and use the gold embossing powder on this black cardstock. Once that's heat embossed, then I went ahead and die cut that shape out. And I just love how this looks cut out on the black cardstock. So I just attach that on the inside of the folder, and then my layout is done. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and have yourself a wonderful day.